This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be happy, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be happy. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child. So with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to false views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay.
Okay, over to you, Ajahn.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Chris. And nice to see you all again. It's one of those great things that we can, I often like the idea of being in people's presence when I give talks or retreats or whatever, because you have a special, I think, connection with people when they're actually there. But on the other hand, it's also wonderful to be able to reach out almost to the entire world. Yeah, it's just wonderful to see the people coming from all the various places around the world, and we can do things over Zoom in this way. It's also marvelous. So it's always nice to be here with you. So we have just chanted the Metta Sutta, and it's kind of it's interesting when you look at that sutta. There are so many parts of it. It's not just metta; it's kind of everything in there. You're supposed to be humble and having speaking in the right way, and it's just being frugal and contented and whatever. It's much more than metta. It's all of these various aspects of the Buddhist path, really. And I think what that shows us is that when we want to perfect something, like we want to perfect our mind, we want to have loving kindness or friendliness for basically for the whole world, then it's a very profound thing, and it needs all of these other supporting factors at the same time. Without those supporting factors, it doesn't really work, and it's very hard to have metta. And so metta always begins with, the entire Noble Eightfold Path. It begins especially with the kindness that we have towards others in speech and action, all of these kind of things. And it's when all of these things come together, that's when the metta meditation becomes very powerful and very strong. Yeah. So I thought I would talk just a little bit about metta in general before we go on to the meditation and the idea of how to do this in meditation practice. There's a few different ways of going about the idea of metta, but the traditional way, the way that you find in places like the Visuddhimagga, for example. The Visuddhimagga is like the great meditation manual in Theravada Buddhism, and you find it there. It is not fully based on the suttas. It adds a little bit more than the suttas have, but sometimes you need a bit of extra information, so that's actually okay. And in that text, even before you come to the metta meditation, every time you meditate, always spend time at the beginning just relaxing, just feeling the body, feeling the mind, making sure that things are, you are at ease, you are relaxed, things are going well. And if you're not at ease and relaxed, then do whatever it takes to find that relaxation in the body, in the mind as well. Just by being patient with yourself, being kind to yourself, being caring, you're already kind of setting up the qualities that you need to do metta meditation later on. And so always take a few minutes, and even if your meditations in daily life, even if they are short, you don't have to meditate very long. Always spend maybe 5 minutes at the beginning just to establish yourself in the right way. And then once you do that, then you can start to do the metta proper when the mindfulness is reasonably established. You're feeling reasonably good about yourself. And the way to do the metta meditation traditionally is to start with yourself. And you don't have to start with yourself, but this is the traditional way. And when you do that, when you have metta towards yourself, it's a very simple thing that we can do. And the idea is just basically to repeat a mantra. A mantra is like a spiritual word that induces a certain feeling or a mood or something, or just a word that kind of has a resonance or whatever. There's many different ways a mantra can actually work. And so the mantra that we use here is something simple like, may I be happy. May I be at peace. In other words, a well-wishing towards oneself. And so the way you do this, you kind of repeat this word. You repeat it again and again. Give it a little bit of time between each time you repeat it. Maybe you can repeat it on the out-breath or whatever, but a little bit of time between each time. And the idea is then you say the word and then you feel. Does it work? Does it have an effect on me? And sometimes it may not have all that much effect. So then you try again. May I be happy? May I be well? May I be at peace? Maybe one of these ideas is enough. You repeat it again. And then you learn to mean it. Obviously, the critical thing here is that you really have to mean it towards yourself. You have to have a sense of feeling good about yourself before these things really can work properly. And this is how, again, the whole idea of the Noble Eightfold Path comes into this. Because if you are a generally kind and good person and you are caring towards others, you have a sense of compassion for the world, of course you're going to have more sense of self-worth, and it becomes easier to have these ideas and actually mean it towards yourself. And so you try, may I be happy. You wait for the feeling. See if there is a feeling there. Very often there may not be a feeling. You have to try it for a while. And then you try to put a bit more intention into it. Remind yourself of the fact that you are living well. You wouldn't be part of the Armadale group if you didn't live well. And so you remind yourself of that. Okay, may I be happy. And then you try this. And you can do this for 10, 15 minutes or whatever. And it's a very beautiful way of practicing. It's a very beautiful way of having that relationship with yourself, that you wish yourself well. It means that you are your own friend. And being your own friend is such an important thing in life, because if you are your own friend, it means that you can live by yourself. It means that you are self-sufficient. It means that when you go on a retreat or whatever and you're by yourself, you feel great. In fact, you feel better by yourself than when you're around people sometimes, because you have this natural friendliness towards yourself. And this is the beautiful outcome of this. So see if you can get into that idea of appreciating yourself, being your own friend. And when you are your own friend, then this metta meditation, it starts to kind of come together as a consequence. But you have to put the intention in there. You really have to want this for yourself. May I be happy, may I be well. Now, for some people, it is hard they cannot make it work for themselves. And that's okay. If you find it hard to have these kind of feelings for yourself, that's all right. It can have to do with conditioning. It can have to do with maybe feeling a bit selfish if you focus on yourself, and that's all right. It depends on your mental makeup, your background, all of these kind of things. And in that case, you can do it towards another person, someone you respect, someone who you can see the good spiritual qualities in. It can be someone like Ajahn Brahmali, maybe, or someone in your life who is very dear to you, like a favorite uncle or auntie or a grandparent or whatever. Someone who has made your life special in a certain way, someone you respect for the beautiful qualities. It's important to choose the right kind of person. Don't choose someone you have a romantic relationship with, because it gets mixed up very easily. It loses its purity very easily. So someone you don't have any kind of attraction towards. And then again, you try the same thing again. May you be happy, may you be well. And you allow it to sort of resonate inside of you for a while. You wait. You listen to the meaning of the words. May you be happy. And then you listen. What does that mean, may you be happy? What do I mean when I say that? Do I really mean it? Do I really want this person to be happy? May you be happy. May you be well. And as you do that, you build up the motivation, you build up the intention, you wait for a while, and then you say it again. And then eventually the idea is to get some of these very beautiful positive feelings of friendliness, of metta, of love, of compassion, whatever it is, arising inside of you. And they will arise as a feeling of joy, a feeling of being elevated, of kind of the defilements falling away, of purity of mind. All of these these are kind of the ways in which you recognize that the metta is happening inside of you, if you do it in this way. And so this is the basic idea of metta. Just very, very simple idea. Don't make it complicated. Meditation should always be as simple as possible. If we complicated it too much, then we kind of get lost in abstractions, get lost in thought, get lost in complexities, and we wonder, what should I be doing next? It should be so simple that you don't have to wonder what you should be doing next. You just kind of sit back and you wait for the feelings to arise. And as you do that, this thing can start to happen. Another way of doing metta meditation, which I will not talk about today, and that is to think more of metta in terms of the not to specific individuals, but to the world at large. So you think of people in a certain direction, and then eventually you expand that out to the whole universe, and so as to include all beings in the universe. Hopefully I will talk a little bit more about this towards the end of the talk today, because there's something I would like to bring up and see what happens once we get into the talk afterwards. But that is all for now. That's just a small introduction for you. So let's do some meditation together and see if we can make this work in practice. Okay, everyone, so as always, just start very gently with yourself and just find that nice posture that you can keep for about 30 minutes or so. You feel at ease, you feel relaxed, you feel in a sense that you are caring for yourself. If we are too hard on the body, we decide to sit through pain and these kind of things, there is also a hardness of the mind at the same time. Don't have any hardness of the mind. Meditation requires a softness. It requires a sense of gentleness. And without that, the meditation is not going to work. So make sure that you have this attitude from the very beginning, from the very start. And this also becomes the foundation, if you like, for metta meditation later on. So be kind to yourself, relax, and just enjoy the meditation from the very beginning. And then just carry on feeling the body and feeling the mind, feeling where you are at, and just trying to understand whether there is any attentions or problems that you want to let go of before you get into the meditation proper. So take time at the beginning, allow things to calm down, make sure you feel that sense of ease, have a sense of care for yourself from the very beginning. Attend to those areas where things are tense or uncomfortable, and as you attend to them, just allow them to relax, allow them to find that ease of the body, and then following along also the ease of the mind. And a big part of the idea of letting go is just to allow things to flow. Allow things to flow without really interfering too much, minimal interference. Remind yourself that you are a conditioned person like everyone else, and that conditioning becomes visible during the meditation practice. It is neither wrong nor right. It is just the way it is right now. There's no judgment required, either positive or negative. All there is just a being with things rather than being against. And as you be with rather than against, things gradually fall into place and they calm down. Remember all the time to have a degree of gentleness and care. Know that you are the subject of all of these conditionings. We all need that compassion and care in our lives. Without that, life becomes ultimately unlivable. So bring that into your meditation practice. And then as you settle down and you gain a degree of clarity in the mind, you can take the meditation really in any direction you like. But my suggestion today is to try to take it in the direction of wishing oneself well. Start off by reminding yourself the meaning of some of these spiritual qualities that we are trying to develop, the meaning of kindness, and you may be able to imagine this by remembering a very kind person, or maybe some of your own actions. In the same way, remember the idea of generosity, the idea of peace, the idea of wisdom. whatever spiritual qualities that really you can relate to really well, compassion, all of these kind of things, and just bring gently to mind the meaning of some of these qualities. And if you are able to relate to these qualities, it means that you have them inside of you too. If you didn't have them, you wouldn't be able to relate to them. And so, what a wonderful thing that is. And based on this idea of beautiful spiritual qualities, you can start to wish yourself well in whatever way you like. You can say to yourself, may I be happy, may I be at peace, may I be content, whatever word that resonates with you. And so I will just use whatever word resonates with me right now, and you can do things in your own way. So may I be at peace, may I be at peace, and then gently say this word to you at regular intervals as we go along. May I be at peace. May I be at peace. And try to feel the meaning of those words. Try to internalize it properly. And don't say too often, but instead listen to the meaning here. May I be at peace. May I be at peace. May I be at peace. See if you can allow the words to come from deep inside somewhere where you actually mean them in a profound sense. And then that is when they start to have a certain effect on you. Make yourself your own friend. Have a good feeling towards yourself. A sense of warmth towards yourself. Wishing yourself well from deep within. May I be at peace. May I be at peace. May I be at peace. And now just ask yourself, how do you feel? And if you do feel more peaceful and at ease, and even if you don't feel more peaceful and at ease, ask yourself, what are the causes and conditions that brought you here? What is the attitude of mind that works? What is the perception that you use to make the meditation go in the right direction? What does it mean to let go? And ask yourself these questions after every meditation so as to learn the ideas behind this, the things that make the mind peaceful, at ease, happy, etc. Okay, everyone. So that's it for the meditation. So we're going to start a little bit of a talk, as we usually have at this time, and I'm going to talk a little bit one of my recently favorite topics, and that is the idea, or some ideas around right view, how to think about life, how to think about the world. I think, as I've said before, I think in this group and many other places, I think this idea of right view is vastly underestimated on the Buddhist path, and that we actually need to consciously develop right view. We need to learn how to think about things in the right way. We need to view things in the right way, and all of this tends to expedite and make the path happen as a consequence. And in a sense, you could say that everything in the Buddhist teachings is really right view in a certain way, because when the Buddha speaks, he's obviously presenting a certain teaching, a certain insight, a certain practice, and all of that is right view in a certain way. But it's also how we approach this, how we look at the world, how we all of these things matter. This is how that right view becomes developed. It is not enough just to read the suttas, because the suttas can seem a bit abstract, they can seem a bit distant, they are often in a language that may not be 100% accessible to us, repetitive and all of these kind of things. And so very often we actually need to deliberately cultivate the idea of right view. So one of the things that always struck me that I thought was very interesting was the way that Ajahn Brahm's teacher, how he would say that everything in the world teaches us. Yeah, and if you then combine the ideas from the suttas and you combine that with then observing the world through the filter of those ideas, that is where things really start to happen. So you use these ideas as general ways of approaching how you look at the world, and as you use these ideas in this way, then it transforms our relationship to the world, how we think about it, how we relate to it. This means the world, I mean both people and also the world in a very general sense. And this is where things really start to happen. And then we get this idea, we go around in the world, we see things, we hear things, we take information in, and then we take it in through the filter of the Dhamma, the filter of impermanence, the filter of dukkha, the filter of non-self, the filter of compassion, the filter of understanding, the filter of kindness, the filter of kalyanamitta, all of these various filters that the Buddha presents to us. And so right view is really fundamental. And when I recently traveled to Europe, I was flying on the way, and fly from Perth to Europe means you have to stop halfway in the Middle East. It's actually very convenient these days. You have one stop in the Middle East and you can go to almost any country in Europe. Very easy travel these days. And I remember coming to Qatar. Qatar has one of these magnificent airports. It's voted the best airport or whatever. And everything is very, very, very fancy. You come up to this airport and you look at it, this enormous place with all these corridors. Everything is coordinated through these systems, computer terminals or what have you. And it's amazing that something like that can even function. It's extraordinary what we have built in this world, the things that we have developed in this world. And the plane I came in on was one of these very large planes, the A380, the double-decker, the Airbus double-decker planes, this enormous plane. And it's like you are in there, there's people everywhere, and it's just really an amazing feat of technology that we humans have created. And when I looked at this, I thought, wow, this is kind of amazing. How have we done this? As individuals, there's not much we can do as individuals, but as a society, we create all of these things. And then it is not just that, but it's everything in our world, our cities, our infrastructure, the roads, the transport systems, the internet, all the information channels that we have in the world, all the institutions that we have, the structures, the governments, the school system, all of these things that we have built up. Some of it is just theoretical, the legal system, these kind of things. And when you think about it, the complexity and the achievements that we have done in this area in creating technology and creating a world that actually functions is extraordinary. It's like an amazing kind of achievement when you look at it that way. And it's very easy to get sidetracked by these things. There are people who are very technology-phile or technophile or whatever you call it. And they will follow the developments in technology in the world. They will see how things develop and they will kind of find a lot of delight in kind of the development of a technology, the latest mobile phone or whatever it might be or whatever it is that they're interested in. But although this is kind of amazing, as I kind of was approaching this terminal on this flight to Qatar, I realized that what I'm doing as I'm doing this, I'm delighting in the world. Why am I delighting in the world? Why am I delighting in human creativity? What is actually going on here? And I realized that at that moment that all of these things that are here, all of the things that we have done, they come about because of suffering. Because we suffer, we are trying to find a way out of that suffering. And all of the things that we have created in the world is this process of trying to find a solution to something inside of us that actually demands a solution. The problem of life, the problem of not being satisfied, the problem of being discontent. And all of these things really come back to one thing, and that is the idea of suffering, the idea of not being satisfied, of not really having found any real happiness in the world. And so it takes us straight back to the first noble truth of the Buddha, the problem of the world. We have created all of these things because we want to find a way out of suffering. We want to find a release from this problem of the world. That is why we have done it. And so you go back to the first noble truth, you go to the second noble truth, which is the craving, the craving which is this driving force inside of us because we're trying to find a way out of suffering. And that very driving force, that craving, creates more suffering in the future. So we crave because we are suffering already, we're not satisfied, and then that very craving then keeps on making this suffering in the future. And all of these things that we have built in the world comes from this process, comes from the two first noble truths of the Buddha. That is what is driving it. And that at that moment I realized that this delighting in technology, the delighting in human society, the delighting in everything that we are doing is actually wrong view. Because what I'm delighting in is actually suffering. I'm delighting in the craving, the desire, the whole idea of getting out of suffering by, in this particular process of creating a better world around us. And when I understood that, I actually became slightly repelled by it. It didn't seem attractive anymore. It seemed rather it's a function of suffering rather than a function of something deeper and more beautiful. And this is the driving force behind this. And so this is kind of one way of using this idea of the Buddhist filter when we look at the world. Instead of delighting in the wrong place, instead of thinking that we are going to find a way to the end of suffering in the world by being creative, we actually realize that what we are doing is we are perpetuating the problem. This very craving that is trying to lead us to happiness actually is the very craving that perpetuates the problem into the future and doesn't really find a solution. And then I thought about, well, what is it about the modern world? Are we really more happy than people were a few hundred years ago? Are we more happy today than at the time of the Buddha? And in some ways, I think it is fair to say that we have discovered certain things that makes life more easy. We have discovered, healthcare that is much better. We have overcome certain illnesses, but then there are other illnesses that have taken their place, it seems sometimes. So you wonder how much of progress that actually is. But in certain ways, we have probably created a better world. In other ways, we may have created a worse world. The social media, the mobile phones that are so distracting and are so craving producing. I don't know much about it because I'm not on any social media apart from email, and I don't have a mobile phone, so I'm kind of out of the loop. But I understand that these are very craving and desire-inducing things. The social media is just one large Mara from the Buddhist point of view, drawing you into the world, attaching you to these things. And of course, that is the very purpose of these tech companies. So are we better off? And sometimes you wonder whether we are better off. Maybe at the time of the Buddha, when the world was very simple, they didn't have much technology, maybe in some ways, not in all ways, but in some ways, that was a better life. Less distraction, more time to become a monk. You just leave the world and you become a monk. That's kind of wonderful, or a nun for that matter, of course. Or more time to practice even as a layperson, whatever it might be. And so the point is basically that we are looking in the wrong place for happiness. We don't find it in the external world. All the development we see is not all that interesting because it will never lead to the place where we actually want to go eventually, which is a liberation from suffering. It is a distraction. We should not pay too much attention to it. We should not be too techno-optimists, because techno-optimism is a kind of completely wrong idea from the Buddhist point of view. Yes, technology may be useful, but it's not going to lead out of the basic problem of existence, which is suffering here. And one of the reasons for this, and one of the things that kind of becomes obvious when you start to think about life, and one of the kind of underlying problems that drives this idea of techno-optimism or developing the world in the right way, creating institutions, creating things that will keep us afloat and keep us happy. One of the underlying ideas, and this is where it kind of gets a bit interesting, because this shows us how some of the deep-seated habits that we have really cause so much havoc for ourselves. And this is the idea of time. Yeah, we think about time in the wrong way here. And what I'm thinking of here is that most people in the world, and I think especially maybe in Christian societies, but actually I think in the end in all societies really, we have this idea of linear time. Yeah, time starts somewhere. Time goes towards a certain goal. We have a certain place that we want to achieve, a certain endpoint, a certain purpose, a certain aim that life is all about. And it's very obvious in Christian societies or post-Christian societies. Many of the societies in the West now, I would call them post-Christian societies, because Christianity is already kind of fading away and people are thinking in different ways. But the habits of Christianity, the cultural significance of Christianity, the influence it has on our culture is still great. And this is part of the problem. And one of the ideas that comes out of Christianity is the idea of linear time. Linear time, the world is created by God at a certain point in the past, and then it moves towards a certain endpoint in the future, the second coming of Christ or whatever it is at the other end. And then there is a line between the two, and we are moving somehow towards that goal in the future. And this gives life a sense of purpose, a sense that the world is heading somewhere. And then we project that onto the world at large. We project it onto technology. We project it onto the societies that we're trying to build. And all of these things have this feeling of also being part of this linear movement towards a certain goal in the future. Science also has this idea of linearity, the scientific way that the way physicists or cosmologists think about the world. We start out with a big bang, and then we end up with a big whimper, or whatever they call it these days. Yeah, it's kind of a start point and an end point. And again, it gives this idea of a linear idea of time. But I think the deepest reason why we tend to get caught up in the linear idea of time actually is not such a cultural thing. It has to do, I think, more with the sense of ego, the sense of self. Yeah? And the reason for that is because the sense of self demands meaning. Yeah, I am important. I have something to do in the world. I want to go somewhere. I need an aim. I need a purpose. And so the very sense of I actually creates this feeling of there being a purpose in the world, that we're actually going somewhere. And we read purpose, we read aims, we read kind of a linear idea of time into the world, because that is what the ego demands. And because the ego is everywhere in the world, because the ego is obviously in all cultures, this is not just in Christian cultures, but it's everywhere, it means that the linear idea of time, I think it is found everywhere to some degree, to some in a certain way. And so this is kind of our outlook. But this outlook is profoundly problematic. It is profoundly problematic because the way the Buddha talks about the world, actually there is no linearity. The Buddha says the world outside, the world around us, the world of technology, of social constructions or whatever, that particular world doesn't have any aim. It doesn't have any purpose. It doesn't have any endpoint. There is no goal. There's just more and more and more of the same. The Buddhist idea of time is not linear time. The Buddhist idea of time is a circular idea of time. The idea that you tend to come back again, not exactly to the same place, but to roughly the same place. Things go in circles. And that idea of circular time, if we take that on board, it means that our idea of the world has changed dramatically. And we understand that ideas of linear time actually is a trap. It traps us into a feeling of purpose where actually probably there is no purpose at all. And this idea of circular time, we can see that in our own lives. The circular time, how our habits kind of happen again and again and again. We make the same mistakes. We have the same thought patterns. You sit down and you think the same thought for the millionth time, thinking that now it's going to work, now there's going to be a solution. You know, the mind sometimes is so stupid. It's like embarrassing sometimes to talk about your own mind, because you think, surely I must be the only one who has such a stupid mind. But we all have these stupid minds. It comes back again and again to the same thing, the same habits, the same silliness, the same defilements, the same problems, round and around and around, a circular idea of time. And that is kind of a bit despairing when you see that, and you want to find a solution to this once you understand this in the right way. Then, of course, there is the larger aspects of circular time, and one of the very important ones in Buddhism is the idea of rebirth. The idea of going around the wheel of samsara, death, birth, round and around and round, basically coming back to the same starting point. Sometimes getting born with a bit more happiness, sometimes with a bit more suffering, but essentially coming back to the same starting point again. Circular time. And all the lessons that you learn in your past lives, maybe some of it sticks in your mind, deep inside somewhere, but a lot of it gets lost. You start from scratch again. You go back to the childhood, back to the same thing that you did in the past, round and around and around, without purpose, without aim, roaming around in samsara, as the Buddha puts it so beautifully in the suttas. It's kind of when you start to see this, it feels so different from how we normally feel the world. It kind of makes things a bit more yucky. And this is one of the dangers. We have to be very careful when we use these kind of profound ideas from Buddhism, that we don't despair, because this can be very depressing, this idea of circular time. It can be terrible. It's like, wow, if it's like this, I don't want to carry on like this. This is awful. But the idea of circular time is even larger than this. And it is so large that when the Buddha talks about the entire universe, he talks about the universe going in cycles. The idea that we find in the suttas is the universe evolving and then doing the opposite, which is dissolving or whatever. And the words that are used in the suttas are very, very similar to the words we use in English: evolve, vivattati, and samvattati are the words used. And so the universe itself goes in these enormous cycles of time. It evolves and it kind of dissolves and it evolves again and dissolves again, going through these enormous cycles. And of course, in these enormous cycles, everything is lost. Everything starts from scratch again. Everything begins over. And all the Buddha's teachings, all the wisdom we may have had in the past, all of that can just disappear in this enormous evolution of the universe. And so what does this mean? And what it means to us is that the world is much less interesting than we think it is. We know when we get too obsessed with the problems in the world, and we should try to resolve the problems in the world, but when we get too obsessed with it, we are trying to find solutions to things that don't have a solution. They may have a temporary solution. They may have a solution that lasts for a while. But in the really big picture of things, there are no real solutions in the world. And if you use this idea in the right way, don't use it in the wrong way, use it in the right way. If you use this idea in the right way, you will not get depressed. You will not get sad, but instead what it will do for you, it will tell you the importance of the spiritual path. And this is where the spiritual path is different from the idea of cyclical time. Because even though the world is trapped in cyclical time, the spiritual path is not. The spiritual path actually has this linear idea again. So this is where linear time also exists in Buddhism. Because the spiritual path does have an end point. The spiritual path does have a sense of progression. And this is why we should always look to see if we are making progress on the spiritual path. So this is where kind of hope comes back again. The idea that there is a purpose to life. There is something to be done. It is just in a very different place from where we normally think about it. The world is not interesting. It is the spiritual path that is interesting. That is where you find real solutions to the problems that we have and to the existence that we are in. So making this distinction is very important. And remember that everything inside of you tends to take you in the wrong direction, because everything inside of you wants you, the sense of self, wants you to think that there is a purpose in the world, when actually the purpose is found instead on the spiritual path. So if you are going to use this in a wise way, then link up your sense of ego to the spiritual path a little bit. You have no choice but to have an ego, at least until you become a stream enterer or whatever. So the ego is going to be there. Link the ego up to something useful. Link it up to something you can feel proud or feel good about yourself for living well. And then you are joining these things together in a beautiful sense. So once we start to think about the world in this way, we start to find the way out. The way out being the spiritual path, the spiritual existence that we have. So what can we say about the spiritual path then? Can we add something more to this? And at the beginning of the session today, I talked a little bit about the idea of metta, of kindness, a very fundamental part of the way that our practice works. And very important, I think, to find ways of making metta, this idea of friendliness, loving kindness, compassion, very important to find ways how to make this work in our life. This is very significant and very important. And sometimes it can be hard, sometimes it can feel dry. We try to have metta, we try to say something kind to ourselves and others, but sometimes it doesn't really have that kind of the emotions don't really arise. So we have to find ways of making this happen. And one of the nice little perceptions that sometimes you can use, which I have found kind of nice sometimes, and this is the idea of thinking about the universe as a loving place full of metta and full of compassion. And this is very counter to how we tend to understand the universe in the modern world. The way we tend to think about the universe is like a cold place. Just this enormous space, this kind of billions of light years, this kind of unfathomable space around us. And when you hear cosmologists talk about the universe, they will say it is cold. It is almost absolute zero out there. It is cold. There's no life can really exist in these vast, dark, interstellar, galactic spaces. And there's nothing going on. It's just dark and cold and completely hostile to any kind of life. And it's this really kind of awful place. And not only is it kind of inhospitable to life, but it's also a very violent place. You have the supernovas, you have the birth of the stars, you have galaxies crashing into each other, you have black holes that swallow up everything around them. So it's inhospitable as well. It is a scary kind of place. You have all the asteroids in the world just kind of waiting to crash into Earth given the right time, etc. On top of that, these days there are aliens. Maybe there's life out there who doesn't like us and who kind of is not happy with what we want to do. And you get this feeling of this world outside of us that is hostile, unfriendly, not really kind. There's nothing there which kind of is really worthwhile, and we are kind of stuck on this little planet, this planet Earth, the only place in this vast hostile universe where there's a sense of kindness, a sense where we can live, a sense that looks after us. And now we are even trying to destroy that planet. What are we up to? We are very stupid as human beings. But I think that entire outlook is completely wrong. It doesn't match the way the world actually is from a Buddhist point of view. The Buddhist point of view is, I think, the exact opposite. And the way to think about this from the Buddhist point of view is to remember all the various kinds of deities that we talk about in Buddhism. We have the Devas, we have the Brahma gods. And as you go up the hierarchy of these various deities, they have more power. They encompass larger parts of the world. And so you have deities that kind of encompass maybe the solar system. And then when you come up to the Brahma realms, the Brahma realms are these deities that are very, very pure. They encompass maybe like the whole galaxy. And then deities that are even higher than that may encompass entire clusters of galaxies. And maybe there are deities, I don't know exactly how this works, but maybe there are deities that encompass the entire universe. This is how they are explained in the suttas. They are like the boss of the galaxy, and I understand them to permeate that space, to be part of the space. And in this way, the world is filled with these marvelous beings that are very, very high on the ladder of development from a Buddhist kind of perspective. And who are these Brahma gods? Well, these Brahma gods, they are the ones who have perfected the Brahma Viharas, they're the divine abidings. These are the beings who are full of loving kindness, full of friendliness, full of compassion, beings that have no defilements in their minds anymore. There is no greed, there is no anger, there are no desires, there is complete contentment. And so the world around us, this is what it is filled with. When you think about it from a Buddhist perspective. So next time you look into the sky, next time you look at the Milky Way, you look at the stars, maybe the moon coming out, you see the vast interstellar space, what you should see love, see compassion, see kindness, see friendliness, feel that we are like enveloped in this blanket in the world of these beautiful qualities. That, to me, is the right way of seeing that world. All of these other things that happen in that world, the stars or whatever it might be, they are encompassed by this beautiful overall field of kindness and compassion and care. That is the right way of thinking about it. And then when you walk out into the dark of night, or you walk out into the sun in the day, you can feel the whole universe, the kindness of the universe being around you, instead of feeling the hostility of the universe around you. And this, to me, is a far more conducive way of thinking about these things. And it allows you to feel more at ease in the world, more relaxed about things, and not so caught up in the ways that we tend to think about the world in the modern society and with modern cosmology or whatever it might be. And you might ask, well, what about evil in the world? What about the badness in the world? And to me, it seems like evil is often very small. Evil is often like you have one person who is maybe a bad person because they had a difficult childhood, or they have a difficult past life or whatever, and they have been conditioned into becoming bad. It doesn't mean that they are fundamentally bad, it's just their conditioning. But evil is often small. Evil is like it's just like this small bubble in the world. It doesn't really stretch out. It is limited to that person. And so evil is always small, whereas the large mind, the mind that encompasses the entire universe, is always a mind with good qualities. And so when we think about the world in this way, that love and kindness is large and encompassing and brings people in, even to the point of encompassing the whole universe. Whereas evil is just kind of reduced to small little dots in that universe, like a small little atom or whatever you might call it. Then again, the world seems like a much more friendly place because the world at large has all of these qualities to it. And so when you think about things in this way, again, it opens up the door to a different way of looking at things. It allows you to kind of envisage things in a way that is more conducive to kindness, more conducive to love, more conducive to compassion, more conducive to all of these things that we want to develop on this path. So that is just a few ideas of how to use some of the Buddhist concepts to increase our idea or our right view of the world, thinking about things in a slightly different way, so as to make us approach the Buddhist teachings in the right way, and then through that encourage the practice of the Buddhist path. So that is my offering for you for tonight. So there you are. So Chris, if there are any questions or whatever, now is the
Yes,
opportunity.
Certainly there are,
Yeah.
Ajahn.
Yeah.
Would you mind if I read one from the chat for you?
Please.
Another
Yeah.
question. Ajahn, could you kindly offer some advice to a meditation practicing Buddhist who is suddenly diagnosed with advanced cancer? How to let go and minimalize suffering? Any timely reminders, Ajahn? Much gratitude.
Yeah. So this is always difficult, and it's always surprising that people who have practiced Buddhism for a long time, when these reality hit home, then that's when you find out the extent to which you have been able to practice this Buddhist path. But the way I like to think about any disaster in life, there are so many different kinds of disaster. These are like the personal disasters when you are diagnosed with cancer, or a loved one is diagnosed with cancer or whatever. These are like our personal disasters in the world. The most important thing to always remember is that your future, if you live well, your future is always going to be a good one. Yeah, it doesn't really matter what happens to the body. It doesn't matter so much. Death is a given. What is not a given is how we live our life. And everyone who comes here is going to be a good person, otherwise you wouldn't be here. And so I would say that the general outlook is to remember that your future is going to be a good one. Remember, you have died so many times in the past. This is something you have gone through before. Now you're here, you are okay. In the same way, you're going to be okay in the future because you have lived life well, you have done the right kind of thing. So rejoice in the fact that you have the Dhamma to lean on, you have these teachings to lean on, you have your own spiritual practice to lean on as you go through this. And as you do that, then it will actually be very beneficial. Another thing to do at a time like this is because you can understand your own suffering and the difficulties of dealing with this, it is an opportunity for also to have more compassion for the whole world. Yeah, you know that you are not the only person who has to go through these kind of problems. Everyone in the world has exactly the same problems, if not now, then certainly down the track. And it gives you an opportunity to have more compassion for the world, yeah, to develop that aspect in yourself, because you start to understand the nature of life. It's very easy to think that we understand the idea of illness, but very often we actually have to confront that illness in our own life before it really sinks in. It's very hard for these things to really sink in properly. It's amazing how difficult it is to take on board these obvious facts of reality. We think we understand, but we haven't really penetrated. So now is your opportunity to learn from this. This is life. If this is life, well, everyone in the world has much more suffering than maybe you realized before. Life is much more fragile, much more uncertain, much more unreliable. And then you can use this opportunity to build up some good qualities in yourself. At the same time, leaning on the good qualities you have developed in the past, then to move forward in this way. And then slowly you can turn the most disastrous parts of your life, you can turn that into something beneficial, turning into a blessing by thinking in this way.
Your answer is very clear, Ajahn. Thank you. Would you like me to read another one from the chat?
Please, yes, just fire away, Chris. Yeah.
Okay, I will then. Dear Ajahn, after we die, do we necessarily get reborn in the future? I feel like when we are not bound by the world, we can transcend the space-time continuum.
Okay, so can you transcend the space-time? I think you can probably transcend the space continuum, because I think space is not something that applies to minds quite in the same way. So you can probably translate the space continuum. Can you translate the time continuum? Now that's a very different thing. Yeah. And I think that it probably is difficult, because going into the past, what does that mean? Does that mean that you meet yourself in the past? What exactly would that mean? I think it can create some very profound philosophical problems. And it also, I think, it can become problematic with the ideas of the laws of karma as well. So I'm more uncertain about the idea of time, and I think time probably goes forward. But even going forward is, can happen in many different ways. Depends where you are reborn. In some realms, time goes very fast because our perception of time will vary depending on all kind of cause and conditions. But I doubt whether we can go into the past. That is just my personal feeling. But please ask someone with maybe someone with time travel experience, and see what they say. Ask some really profound monk. Ask Ajahn Brahmali next time you have a chance. See what he says.
And the next, I have listened to your teachings for years. Today I have finally heard them in real time. Thank you so much for expounding the Dhamma and providing some Dhammic uplift. If you were to meditate on one sutta for the span of a month or so, which sutta would you pick? I would say that take something practical. I use something that you can really meditate on, that you actually then can use it afterwards to really enhance your practice. And there's a number of things you can do. One sutta that actually you can contemplate on is the Metta Sutta that we just chanted before, because it is so full of qualities that are obviously to be developed, obviously to be made part of this path. And so that is, certainly that will take you a long, long way if you want to develop use a particular sutta. Another sutta which I personally find very useful to look at is what is called the gradual training, because it shows you the whole training from the very beginning all the way to the very end, and it shows you kind of where you start off, and then you have some idea where you're at, somewhere on that continuum. And a good example of the gradual training is the middling sayings of the Buddha, number 27, the Chula Hattipadopama Sutta, the shortest sutta on the simile of the elephant. And the Majjhima Nikaya 27 is a very good one to reflect on. But really, if you find anything that you find inspiring, often it is actually very useful to do things that you find inspiring, because if you find inspiring and you can relate to it, then contemplating that is often more useful, because it means that it will touch you in a deeper way as a consequence. Thank you. What do you find motivating and inspiring about teaching and answering questions from lay persons like us?
Well, it's just, what I find inspiring about it is that I find the Dhamma, to me, is the meaning of life. This is what life is about. So if you want to, as long as you can talk about the meaning of life and you can share that with others, it's just beautiful. It's a wonderful thing to do. There's two aspects to that. One is when you teach, you learn yourself. This is kind of one of the great things about teaching, because you have to reflect on what you are saying, and you have to, as you are talking, new ideas emerge because you are obviously reflecting about these teachings. And so the whole idea of teaching is also a kind of development in your own practice. And then it is also wonderful to be able to share the teachings of the Buddha with other people. And if that can help other people to have a better life, what a wonderful thing that is. It is a way for me to create good karma. I'm being selfish, just looking after myself all the time. I want to create good karma in my life. But it is not really selfish. It is because selfishness is a narrowness of the mind. It is more like a sharing, which is a spiritual kind of goodness involving both everyone here and also myself at the same time. So everyone benefits from this. That's kind of the idea. But to me, the teaching of the Buddha are basically this is the meaning of life. And if you found the meaning of life, obviously it's going to be very interesting to share them with others.
Okay, Ajahn. A new one. What is the line between trying and still fighting versus accepting and letting go when you're in a situation when you want to do better, including in my practice of Buddhism, but there seem to be many obstacles and things that do not go according to plan?
So that Yeah, so that is a difficult one, and so what you have to do is you should never give up. I think this is the important one. Yeah, so accepting does not necessarily, it's not the same thing as giving up. Accepting is more like understanding that you have habits that are very strong, understanding that you have delusions in the mind that don't see the world in the right way, and these things are very profound hindrances. And because those hindrances are so profound, you need to be very kind with yourself, because these things are going to block you really badly and make life really, really difficult. And so you try, but you understand also that there is limits to what you can do. And so you try, and then you accept a little bit, and then when you accept, actually that is often when the insights can arise. Because if we are always trying, if we're always craving, if we're always trying to push ourselves forward, then very often that very desire blocks our ability to see what is going on. But the moment you accept, the moment you stand back, then you can start to have insight. Why am I actually failing here? What is going on? What can I do to improve this practice? How can I have more compassion for people in the world? How maybe I should do this? Maybe I'm just using my mobile phone too much. Delete all your social media from your mobile phone. Only use social media on your laptop or whatever when you come back home, on your desktop or whatever it is. Do something which kind of makes your life more manageable in that sense. Be honest with yourself. Sometimes honesty is very, very important, and then gradually you kind of find a way. So be accepting, be kind to yourself, because it's if you don't accept, often that is a kind of violence towards yourself. But accepting means understanding your limitations, then gradually finding solutions, and then taking things step by step by step. And hopefully you will make improvements in this way here.
And a theoretical question for Ajahn. Is there no universal objective reality for everything is contained in the mind? And we shouldn't all sentient beings are subject to the law of karma equally. How do these two things coexist if we can assume that some people don't believe in karma or are not even aware of the law of karma?
Could you say again the very first part, Chris, please?
Certainly. A theoretical question for Ajahn.
Yeah.
If there is no universal objective reality, or everything is contained in the mind, and we assume that all sentient beings are subject to the law of karma equally.
Okay, so there is no objective reality. I don't think we should, and everything happens in the mind. I think Buddhism doesn't really have a view on that. I mean, if you look at the history of philosophy, they often talk about two different views of the world. One is the materialist view of the world, where everything is material stuff, and the mind is like an epiphenomenon arising out of material phenomena. And I think that view is certainly not a Buddhist view at all. It's a very anti-Buddhist view. And then there is the kind of the idealist view that everything is just mind and everything comes out of mind. And that, I think, is more compatible with Buddhism. But I think that Buddhism doesn't really have that view either. Buddhism is kind of slightly undefined, exactly how it works. So I would say that the point is that there are laws in the world. It doesn't matter exactly where they are, whether they are in the kind of external world around us or whether they are mental laws. But just as there can be laws in the world around us, like the laws of physics, there can also be mental laws. And the Buddha is really about the laws of the mind. And that is what you have to focus on. And those laws of the mind are what we talk about when we talk about karma and rebirth, when we talk about dependent origination. All these cause and effect things in Buddhism are mental causes and effects, and not cause and effects in the kind of physical space that we normally talk about when we talk about the laws of physics. So I don't think there is any real problem there. I think that this is just the reality of things, and whether you believe in the law of karma or not is not really what matters. Yeah, either there is a reality or there is not. It's like rebirth. It's not about whether you believe in it or not. The important question is whether there is a rebirth. That is the significant question. And if there is rebirth, well, then that's just the way things are. Yeah, it's just the law. It's just like the way the world works. And then it is useful to believe in it, because if you don't believe in the way the world is, then there's going to be a clash between your ideas and the way the world is, and you're going to make bad choices because of that. Good choices are always based on good information. That is why the Buddha is the eye in the world, who presents us with how the world actually works. Then we can make good choices because of that. And so it matters enormously whether we believe in rebirth or not. It matters because either that is going to be in accordance with the reality or it is not. And if we go against reality, that is where we have a problem. And so karma is definitely part of this, and it is a law of the world in a sense of being a law of the mind, and that is always, it is just as important and just as fixed, if you like, as any other kind of laws that we talk about in science. Maybe more fixed probably than the laws of science, I would say, yeah.
Well, Ajahn, we seem to have reached that magic time.
Yeah.
Would you like to offer thanks, or
Yeah. Thanksgiving? Thanksgiving, is it? Yeah, okay. Okay, great. Okay, anyway, very wonderful to see you all again, and very nice to be here. And I always like to do a quick homage to the Triple Gem at the end. I think it's always nice just to remind us of who our real teachers are, the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. So I'm just going to do the very quick homage to the Triple Gem. And if you want to join in, you're very welcome. If you don't want to, that's also fine, entirely up to you. So here we go. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Svakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. Okay, everyone, take care. See you next time. Okay.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Thank you. Bye-bye.